Thanks so much to everybody for taking the time to join. And we're really glad to have this opportunity to share with you a bit about our cohorts. I know you might have heard various ones of us talk, hopefully not ad nauseum yet, but we're really excited and really hoping to get the word out about this cohort. So we really appreciate you joining, and please keep in touch after this session ends too, so we could further brainstorm and get your ideas about how best to broadly promote this cohort and recruit for the cohort. So I think with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started. And again, let me know if I'm sharing the right screen because this is showing up on multiple screens and it's very confusing to me. Okay, are you seeing the presentation view? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Yay. Okay, now let's hope I can advance. All right, so with me here today, actually, is my name is Scarlett Gomez, and my colleagues Iona Chang and Salma Sharif Marco are also here in the room with me today. The three of us are the principal investigators for the Aspire cohort. As noted here, this is a grant that's funded by the National Cancer Institute. So you see the grant number there. And we'll talk a bit about all of our collaborative partners. I know some of you are also here today with us, so welcome. Salma, Iona, and I are professors in the Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics here at UCSF. We've been collaborating together for a long, long time, and I dare say that this forming the Aspire cohort is probably a dream, I guess, if you will, that all three of us have had for a long time. So it's just really such an honor and pleasure to be here to be able to talk about this. We also are investigators in the Cancer Center here called the Helen Diller Family Comprehensive Cancer Center at UCSF. And we also co-lead the Greater Bay Area Cancer Registry. So we're going to be actually presenting some data that provide the basis and rationale for why we're really interested and why there is a need to study cancer across our Asian American populations. Okay, so I want to start out with some very brief background about the why. Why do we need an Asian American cohort for studying cancer? Well, the first why is because Asian Americans are the fastest growing and the most diverse racial group in the US. Between the 20-year period between 2000 and 2019, this population doubled in size. And if we sort of bring this trend, this doubling out, this population is projected to surpass 46 million by the year 2060. There's also tremendous diversity. So I think I probably don't need to tell you how diverse the population is, but whenever I look at these numbers, it's just astounding to me, just the sheer number of ethnic groups that comprise this category that we call Asian American. And so you see here with the pie chart on the left, the six largest groups are represented in the blue pie slices. But that group, and these are also going to be the six groups that are over basically representing whenever we look at aggregated statistics. We're basically looking at statistics represented by these six largest groups. But if you look at the green pie, and you follow that arrow over to the right, there are multiple other smaller but still important groups that comprise this other Asian population that comprise 16.2% of the overall Asian American population. And in fact, this aggregated population has origins from more than 30 different countries. We speak more than 100 different languages and dialects. And there's tremendous diversity. So there's a great article that's put out by NPR. You can see the article link on the bottom there. This article shows six charts that dismantle the trope of Asian Americans as a model minority. This is probably my favorite chart of all time. What it shows is median household income on the y-axis by education, specifically percent of adults age 25 and over with at least a bachelor's degree on the x-axis. And so the first glance that you see that there's a strong correlation between income and education. Okay, but there's also a huge spread from the bottom left corner to the top right corner in terms of across the Asian ethnic groups. The other thing to note is that the size of the dots represent the size of the population. So what do we see? We see that the groups with the largest dots tend to be those groups that cluster near the upper right. So these are the groups that are represented in whenever we look at aggregated statistics. And so this is why we have the model minority myth, because when we look at aggregated statistics, Asians tend to show up as being pretty well off, higher income, higher education, and consequently also generally lower cancer rates. And then also the other notable thing is if we compare the highest and the lowest income groups here, Asian Indian and Burmese, these are also the two groups of the highest and lowest income across the entire US population. So when we think about this is who we're aggregating when we look at aggregated statistics, there's a lot of heterogeneity that's hidden within those statistics. Okay, we're going to try to make this maybe a little bit interactive, so feel free to unmute if you know the answer and just shout out the answer. I've just shown you I just show you some data about how heterogeneous the Asian American population is. This also translates into vast disparities and unique cancer patterns. So our first question for you all, again, feel free to shout out the answer if you like, is which types of cancer have higher incidence rates in some Asian American ethnic groups? Is it one, two, three, or four? Our team is not allowed to answer. Oh, I see people in the chat. Okay, maybe three. Wow, we're getting a lot of different answers. Okay, the answer is two. So these are traditionally the cancers that tend to be of higher incidence rates in some of our Asian American ethnic groups. And one thing you'll note in common is that most of these, well, yeah, actually all of these cancers have primarily an infectious etiology. And so Asian Americans have unique cancer disparities, including the fact that for many Asian American groups, cancer is the leading cause of death, surpassing cardiovascular disease. Many of the Asian American groups have persistently lower cancer screening rates relative to other racial and ethnic groups in the US. And as we just saw in the earlier slide, there are some cancers, particularly those of infectious etiology, that are of higher rates in some Asian groups. This is our second quiz question, but we are seeing contemporary data are showing us that there are some cancers that for which rates are rapidly increasing. So for which types of cancers are rates increasing rapidly among most Asian American groups? Okay. It seems like we have more consistency in answers with this one. Yes, you are right. It is one. So we are seeing rapidly increasing rates for breast cancer, lung cancer among females, endometrial cancer, as well as prostate cancer. Our team has been working on a report. We hope it will be released, published sometime this summer, later in the year. That's going to be providing updated cancer incidence trends across multiple Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander groups. I'm going to focus briefly on work that us and other colleagues have been looking at for breast and lung cancer among Asian American females who've never smoked. These are, all of these disparities that we've just talked about here. We will be well positioned with a study like the Aspire cohort to be able to address them. So breast cancer in Asian Americans, it is the most commonly diagnosed cancer across most Asian American ethnic groups. It's the second most common cause of cancer-related deaths. We also know that rates vary threefold across the Asian American ethnic groups. And some of the earlier studies, especially these migrant studies, when I was in training, we learned about migrant studies. These studies show risk starts out low in Asia and then it goes up with immigration to the US. And then with subsequent generations in the US, breast cancer risk keeps increasing. But we think that this pattern may be reversing, as suggested by two recent studies. Another disparity with regards to breast cancer in Asian Americans is we know that mammography screening rates are low in most Asian American groups. So I just told you about disaggregated or aggregated statistics, how bad they are, and here I am showing you aggregated statistics for the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander group. But hang tight. We hope to have a paper. It's been submitted. It's under review, and hope it will be coming out in the next few months. But this is showing breast cancer incidence in Asia, across 5 different broad racial and ethnic groups in the US between the years 2000 and 2022. This is looking across nationally using cancer registry data. And what you could see is, as I've put in larger font here, the breast cancer trend for Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander group is over 2% per year in the 10-year period between 2012 and 2022. And that is the fastest increase relative to other racial and ethnic groups. And I put sort of below here some of the groups, the Asian American groups at the highest rates, which are Chinese at 4.4% per year in the more recent 6-year period, and Vietnamese also at 4% per year. But if we focus on younger breast cancer, that we refer to this as early onset breast cancer. So specifically here, this is breast cancer diagnosed at age less than 50. This rate of increase among Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander, again, far surpasses the rate seen in any other groups at almost 3% per year. And this is in the more recent 6-year period. And in fact, as you can kind of surmise from the very last data point, and certainly we see this in California as well, this has led to the rate of early onset breast cancer to exceed now the rate of early onset breast cancer for non-Hispanic white women. So I want to just reiterate Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islanders as a combined group now has the highest rate of early onset breast cancer of any other racial and ethnic group. These are mortality trends from the American Cancer Society, and it shows that while we see declining mortality across all racial and ethnic groups, the exception is the AAPI or Asian American Pacific Islander group, which is the only group that's not seeing a decline in mortality rates. So some of these increased risks have been getting some press in the media. We are doing a study funded by the Breast Cancer Research Foundation called the CRANE study that's trying to address risk factors for some of these emerging patterns. But I think that hopefully we'll start to see a little bit more attention on this emerging disparity in the community. The second cancer that emerging disparity that we wanted to highlight is lung cancer, specifically among Asian American females. So this stack bar chart shows the the top 5 common causes of cancer-related deaths. And what you can see circled here in red is that lung cancer, which is the blue bar, is the #1 cause of mortality for Chinese, Vietnamese, Japanese, and Korean. In terms of the Asian American groups. And not only that, lung cancer contributes to around 20% of all cancer-related deaths in these groups. Why is this notable? Well, this is notable because we also know from population level data that a very small percentage of Asian American females are smokers, are themselves smokers. So this leads us to our second question then. If it's not smoking, what else could it be? What are the established causes of lung cancer in Asian females who've never smoked? Check all that apply. Feel free to shout out the answer or put your answer in the chat. I don't see anyone responding to this one.
This is a tough question.
I guess it is kind of tough. I know.
Right? And now I'm
People are
seeing
saying, yeah, gas stoves. Yeah.
all of the above.
Yeah, I know. This is a tough one. We just did this also over the weekend to a medical school to med students, and they also struggle with this one too. No, this would not include tongue cancer. We're specifically referring to lung cancer here. Okay, I'll go ahead and reveal the answer. So the key is established. So these are the 5 established risk factors for lung cancer among never smokers. The other two, incense burning and meat consumption, we would probably classify them as probable or putative risk factors, in that some studies have shown them to be associated, but it's not consistent. So we can't say that they're established yet. So more research is needed. So these are the key risk factors for lung cancer among Asian females. The thing is, these studies have all been done in Asia. These are all risk factors that have been identified through studies in Asia. And so we don't know to what extent these risk factors are relevant and apply to Asian American women. Things like secondhand smoke. Any of us who's been to Asia know that smoking is very, very prevalent. You could be in an enclosed space and be just surrounded by smoking fumes. Cooking oil fumes, a traditional practice of many East Asian cultures of, cooking with a wok at very high heat. You wait till the pan gets really hot and then you add your oil, and that's how you get that nice smoky flavor in your food. Especially in the presence of poor ventilation, the smoke that's emitted from those cooking oil fumes does contain carcinogens. Prior lung diseases and certain persons with certain genetic mutations may be more vulnerable to smoky air. And that's a finding that came out more recently. Again, to reiterate, these are all studies that have been done in Asia, and we don't know how prevalent these exposures are here in the US because why? There's been no studies at all of lung cancer in Asian American females here in the US. And also, the exact burden of disease is unknown because we have no data on smoking status and the usual sources of data that we use to document cancer rates. So to address that second question, Iona and I, together with our colleague, who's a thoracic oncologist, Heather Wakely from Stanford, were motivated to apply for funding. So we're funded by the NCI to basically answer that question of um, what is the burden of lung cancer among Asian American females who've never smoked? What we did was we used data from electronic health records that's linked to cancer registry data. This is for Northern California and Hawaii. And what these bars show you are among females with lung cancer, this is the distribution of their smoking status. So it ranges from among Native Hawaiian and other Pacific Islanders of a low of 14 to 20% to, you could see here for Chinese females, nearly 80%. So let me just reiterate what this means. Among Chinese females diagnosed with lung cancer, almost 80% of them have never smoked. It's exceedingly high. And as you know, our current guidelines for smoking or for lung cancer screening are only for those who are either current or past heavy smokers. So this 80% of Chinese females would have never qualified for lung cancer screening. We also were interested in documenting the actual incidence rates of lung cancer. And what we did was that we found that all across all of the AA and HPI groups, with the exception of Japanese Americans, incidence rates were 1.5 to 2 times higher relative to non-Hispanic white women. This is actually the very first time the study that we did to actually calculate and show incidence rates of lung cancer for these particular population groups by smoking status. This is a study that was done using electronic health records data from Kaiser Permanente, Northern California, conducted by our colleagues Lori Sakota and Jeff Bolota. And what they were able to do through their electronic health record system was to look at lung cancer incidence trends across 4 different racial and ethnic groups overall. So they show that it was declining overall. Interestingly, it was also declining for those who've ever smoked. We suspect that this likely is due to cessation of smoking among smokers over time. It does make a difference. If you quit, your risk starts to decrease right away. But what's interesting here in this Kaiser population is that for never smokers, we see that rates are stable. Rates of lung cancer are stable across most racial and ethnic groups, but notably, this line here is the rate of lung cancer among Asian males and females who've never smoked. And this is the only rate that's increasing of all of these groups that we're looking at here. This is a rate of 2% increase per year. So we were motivated to pursue the next study, which we call our FAN study. This is co-jointly led by myself, Iona Chang, and Moon Chen from UC Davis, and this is called the FAN study, which is trying to identify lung cancer etiology and risk factors among Asian American females who've never smoked. The FAN study, we just completed recruitment. We are urgently working on analyzing the data because we recognize the importance and timeliness of getting the results out. Over the years, we've gotten a lot of press around this important topic, and it's a topic that's very close to our hearts. And again, another emerging disparity that the Aspire cohort will be really well positioned to address. Okay, now we're going to get into the meat of the Aspire cohort. So this is our last quiz question. A study that was published in 2021 by one of our colleagues reviewed all the grants that were funded by the National Institutes of Health, or NIH. In this study that they did, what percent of grants were focused on Asian Americans? What do you think? Wow, yeah, you are correct. It was less than 1%. Specifically, it was 0.17%. Well less than 1%. So I think it's fair to say that we know relatively little about what causes cancer in Asian Americans because research is underfunded. Asian Americans are underrepresented in cancer cohorts. Most studies do not collect detailed information about exposures that are unique to the immigration experience or just the lived experiences of Asian Americans. Many smaller Asian American groups are not included in current cancer research, and this next bullet is something that we constantly hear about when we are talking with community members is stress. People believe that experiences to stressors over our life periods we do know that this can alter biology, but the connection to cancer remains understudied. And again, as we've just reviewed, there are emerging disparities. For example, the rising rates of breast cancer and lung cancer among Asian American females who've never smoked. The bottom line is, given the diversity, which translates into heterogeneity in different exposures, there's just a tremendous opportunity by focusing on the collective Asian American population for us to discover novel risk factors. And so this discovery certainly helps to address these disparities that we're observing among Asian Americans, but they can also result in discoveries that can benefit everybody. So this is our Aspire cohort. As I mentioned, Salma, Iona, and I are the principal investigators. We have partners who are leading recruitment within their communities at Cedars-Sinai, UC Irvine, UC Davis, and Temple University. We are also partnering with colleagues at UCLA and Thomas Jefferson for additional scientific consultations. We have an amazing multiple community advisory boards that we'll talk about in a bit, and a scientific advisory board that's probably, in my view, because again, this is something that's kind of been a long-term dream of ours, for me, kind of just a list of who's doing research in Asian Americans and cancer. Just an amazing group of really accomplished researchers in this field. So when we set out to write the grant, we had to submit the grant 3 times to NCI before it was funded. When we reached out to our colleagues and reached out to our communities, and our colleagues in turn reached out to their communities, the response was just tremendous. I mean, people recognize the importance of this. People recognize that our communities and our groups and have just been neglected for so long. And, some of the feedback we heard was, well, finally, it's about time. We're finally showing up. So we are doing this not for us. This is for the communities, and this is for our next generations. These cohorts are really meant to, if we do it right, are really meant to outlast us. They're really there for, cohorts that we've been involved in go on for years and years and years, generations and generations, and discoveries keep getting made. So this is a list of 40 plus organizations that provided letters of support for us to include in our grant application. We have a national CAB that includes folks who represent policy sectors, patient views, large community networks, and their role really is to help us to think through important questions to incorporate and ask, but also how to expand and make this a sustainable cohort going forward. And then each of our local recruitment sites have formed our own CABs as well. And I'm glad to see many of you here today. So our aims for this initial, so our grant is for 5 years from the NCI. We're already thinking about how to apply for more funding and so that we can expand and sustain this over time. So this is going to be a constant thing that we're going to pay attention to. So in this initial 5 years of funding, we're really focusing on methodology, trying to really establish a robust cohort through being able to developing methods to reach especially the understudied smaller Asian American communities, developing statistical approaches for being able to analyze data for the smaller populations, leveraging AI to look at intersections across multiple social factors. And then we're going to be looking at some of the intermediate outcomes because we won't really have enough follow-up time to really be able to assess cancer as an endpoint quite yet. So we're going to be looking at things that can lead up to cancer, including healthcare access, cancer screening, cancer-relevant health behaviors, and self-reported stress. With regards to an overview of Aspire, we're aiming to recruit 20,000 Asian Americans, all Asian American groups, males and females, ages 40 to 75, who are living in the US or US territories. And because, again, our interest is in observing cancer outcomes over time, this would exclude those with prior cancer diagnoses. We envision this to be population-based, meaning that we want to be as reflective of the underlying US population of Asian Americans as possible. We also really are wanting to focus on trying to represent the understudied groups, which are also smaller in numbers within the Asian American diaspora. So this means oversampling some of these groups, including Bangladeshi, Cambodian, Hmong, Thai, and Pakistani, but also meaning that we would undersample some of the larger groups like Chinese. These are the languages that we're going to be having all of our materials available in. So it's about nine, I think it's 9 languages is what we counted. We certainly recognize that this is not all inclusive of all possible languages that Asian Americans speak, but hopefully with future rounds of funding, we can add in more languages. We recognize that to be population-based, we can't just rely on one recruitment method. We have to use a mix of different modalities for recruitment. So this means focusing on community-based recruitment as well as national outreach, registries, ethnic social media. So this is where we would love your ideas. If you have any connections or contacts with any of these approaches or networks that can help us to get the word out and recruit. If you have a listserv, community organization listserv, if you have someone you know at a newspaper or an ethnic media, or if you're a social media influencer with millions of followers, connect with us. We would love to help you to get the word out about Aspire. And as we mentioned, the NCI funding we received is just to get this cohort up and running, to build the infrastructure so that we can efficiently, with more funding, expand. What's involved for participating? I think there's often a common misperception that if I'm going to participate in a health study, I have to travel somewhere and I have to be subjected to some kind of intervention. Well, this can be participating in the Aspire cohort can be done entirely in the comfort of your own home. We really envision this all data collection to be done virtually via a secure data platform. Currently with our initial round of funding, this entails 4 surveys. So we've broken up the survey into 4 smaller surveys. I don't really think it takes 20 to 30 minutes. I've done it. It took me 15 minutes for the first 2 surveys. But we will also accommodate any preferred modes of participation. So a lot of our community recruitment sites are enrolling folks in person at community events. We provide a $10 gift card after the second survey and then another $15 gift card after the fourth survey. And we'll be collecting saliva for future genetic and genomic assessments from a stratified random sample of 2,500 participants. And the way that we're going to be assessing outcomes and as well as linkage to other exposures like neighborhood data is through linkages to various data sets such as cancer registry and vital statistics data. And again, just to note, all participation can be done at home. There are no interventions or medical tests that are involved. These are some of just very broad, the domains that we'll be collecting, asking participants to answer questions on within the surveys, sociodemographic, social status data, immigration experience, structural and social drivers and stressors, physical health, mental health and stress, cancer screening, healthcare access, and some cancer, both established as well as emerging cancer risk factors. And through linkages, as well as through the survey, we'll be able to collect data on structural and social drivers of health. These are what we conceptualize as the primary stressors that communities are experience. So these include things like structural racism, social physical environments, different amenities or lack thereof within their communities, how walkable their communities are, perceived stressors and problems within their communities, and the extent of social cohesion and support from neighbors. So, how are we doing? We kind of had a start and stop to recruitment because when we initially started last summer, we were having experiences with fraudulent participants, as with now we're recognizing any online type of study that offers an incentive. It's very common. So we kind of had to, so we sort of paused on recruitment to try to figure out how we can really try to mitigate, stop the fraudulent participants. And we've recently, I'd say within 3 months, have sort of restarted again. So these numbers reflect I think primarily our recruitment efforts over the past few months. We've had 777 as of yesterday, last night, complete the baseline survey. And this is a graph that shows over time the enrollment numbers by age group. So you could definitely see that we are steadily increasing our numbers in all of these age groups, which is great. But we are probably needing to really try to represent more, ramp up our efforts more in the older age groups. And with regards to participants by ethnicity, about a third of our participants thus far are Chinese. We also are getting a sizable number, which is amazing, of Koreans, Asian Indians, Filipinos, and Vietnamese. And we anticipate as we start to roll out some of the other, so we've rolled out right now about half of the languages of those 9 languages. And so we anticipate that when the other languages, materials in the other languages are available, hopefully we can really focus recruitment on some of these smaller groups here. And in terms of numbers, here's a representation of where they live across the US. So you could definitely see reflected the large numbers in not only California, but Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and the New York areas because of our recruitment or temple recruitment site out there. But also Texas and Florida. So that's great. So again, as I noted, the Aspire cohort, we really anticipate this to be a resource. This is a resource for communities. This is a resource for other researchers. This is a resource for trainees, for policymakers. And so we really want to make sure that we set this up in a very robust way because we think it has a lot of potential over time to have hopefully a meaningful impacts on policy, on impacting clinical and public health practices. We hope the data can be used by communities for informing both community level and individual level interventions. We want to make sure the data are going to be available broadly to other researchers and trainees, and that it will again outlast us and be a valuable resource for future generations. So this is the QR code. It will take you to this URL if you don't feel comfortable scanning a QR code. I'll just give you a bit of time to get to our website. So this is going to be now the interactive portion of our presentation. So if you can take out either on your computer, if you can go to our website, or on your phone, if you could go to our website. And again, you could do it by typing in aspirecohort.ucsf.edu or scanning the QR code. So this is going to be I know you are all here because, Debbie advertised this as how can you help? So this is going to be the how can you help portion of our program. So if you go to our website, you can see, all different, we have FAQ pages, we have a media page. But if you go to the Aspire community page, so again, you could go to the tab to go to the Aspire community page, or you can scan this QR code right here on this page. So there are three different sections here. There's spreading the word in the community, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. There's become an Aspire cohort study ambassador. And then there's just anything else. If you would like to just reach out to us, we'd be happy to brainstorm with you on how to help. But with regards to the ambassador program, so we have had so many people, when we first launched the study, so many people reached out to us, and which we're so incredibly grateful for. And because of the huge response of people just wanting to see how they can help, we developed this ambassador program. So we had our first cohort, we have still our first cohort of ambassadors. We've been working with them over the past about almost a little over half a year now, and I think we'll start opening up applications for our second annual cohort of Aspire ambassadors. So this is very flexible. It's very minimal commitment, just a minimum of 4 hours per month. But it's really, helping to promote Aspire to your respective local, regional, national Asian American communities through connecting with organizations, participating in tabling events, helping with online engagement. Um, we have regular meetings amongst our ambassadors where, tips and are shared. And we, are always looking for ideas. So if an ambassador says, I would really love to learn how to create a whiteboard video, and I think I can help to distribute in this way, our team can help with developing that skill set. Okay, so the second way to become involved is by spreading the word in your community. And this can be done either by distributing Aspire flyers, sharing about Aspire on social media. Again, if you're an influencer, sharing about Aspire on your social media. If you're connected to media, reaching out or letting us know or connecting us to the media. So now I would like you to go to click on Aspire Toolkit. You can also get there by using this QR code here. So this will take you to a website, and that website will have multiple files in there. Those files, right now they're in English. Debbie's going to put the other in language versions up shortly. But they're basically flyers, infographics, postcards. If you're going to an event, if you maybe frequent a cafe where you see a lot of Asian Americans hanging out and the cafe has a board, just tack a flyer up there. And if you don't want to print out the flyers on your own, just contact us. We can send you a batch of flyers. The other thing we would like you to do right now is to go to, if you scroll down on the list of files, there's number of social media files. We want you right now to post about Aspire to any of your social media networks. So this is one that I just did last week to my LinkedIn profile. I copied, so you can click on one of the files there, the Word document, and you will see this message. You can just copy this message into your social media, whether it's LinkedIn, your Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I don't know what other social media people use. There's also there's a number of photos down there, so you could copy the photo over. Um, if you want to use a hashtag, I think a hashtag we've been using is hashtag Aspire Cohort. Um, so yes, please go ahead and do that. And so that's just today, but we hope we can sustain the interest and keep, this is a 5-year study, so we're not just gonna get the word out today and then that's it. So we hope you can continue to help us with promoting the study in these different ways. This week, you can text the QR code and we'd be happy to share these slides with you so you can, access the QR codes to 5 friends or family members who you know are eligible. You saw what the eligibility criteria are. They're very simple. And text a QR code to them along with the social media message. And this month, when you have an opportunity to be out and about at a community event or at some place where Asian Americans frequent. Help us to distribute the flyers. Again, if you don't want to print them out on your own, let us know. We'd be happy to send you a batch of flyers. And that's it. We're happy to take questions. I don't know if Ayana is still here, but the team is here. Salma is still here, and want to just thank you so much for your time and hanging in here. Thank you.